When you think of Batman today, you picture billion-dollar blockbusters, dark crime thrillers, and iconic actors in the suit. But the very first man to ever bring Batman to life on screen was Lewis Wilson, and his story is often forgotten. Born in 1920 in Framingham, Massachusetts, Wilson was only 23 years old when Columbia Pictures cast him in the 1943 film serial simply titled Batman. This was the very first live-action appearance of The Dark Knight, released at the height of World War II. Now, this wasn't the Batman you know. Forget high-tech gadgets or a brooding detective. Wilson's Batman was more like a government agent taking on wartime villains. His main adversary wasn't the Joker or the Penguin. It was a Japanese spy named Dr. Daka, played by J. Carroll Naish. The series doubled as propaganda, with Batman portrayed as a patriotic hero fighting the enemies of America. Wilson's Batman wore a very different costume too. The cowl had long, floppy ears, the cape was oversized, and the entire suit looked more like a stage costume than superhero armor. But even so, this marked the birth of Batman on screen. The serial ran for 15 chapters and was popular enough to set the foundation for Batman's future adaptations. But despite being the first to don the cape, Wilson's career didn't take off. He never got the chance to return for the sequel. He was replaced by Robert Lowry in 1949. After a few smaller roles, including Naked Alibi in 1954, Wilson quietly stepped away from Hollywood. He ended up working for General Foods and lived the rest of his life outside the spotlight. Interestingly, his family kept ties to cinematic history. Wilson married novelist and actress Dana Nuttall, and their son Michael G. Wilson went on to become one of the main producers of the. So while Lewis Wilson didn't continue as Batman, his legacy still influenced some of the biggest action films in history. Adam West. Born William West Anderson in 1928 in Walla Walla, Washington, Adam West's path to stardom wasn't straightforward. He studied literature and psychology at Whitman College, served in the U.S. Army during the Korean War, and even worked as a milkman before pursuing acting full-time. After some small TV and film roles, including westerns like Sugarfoot and guest spots on Maverick, West got his big break thanks to a quirky Nestle Quick commercial, where he played a James Bond-style spy. That performance caught the attention of producer William Dozier, who was casting a new Batman TV series. In 1966, Adam West became Batman, and television would never be the same. The series was bright, colorful, and deliberately campy. Instead of the dark vigilante from the comics, West's Batman was wholesome, witty, and delightfully over the top. Alongside Burt Ward as Robin and later Yvonne Craig as Batgirl, West turned Gotham City into a playground of puns, gadgets, and outrageous villains. The show was a cultural phenomenon. Kids loved the action and sound effect graphics, bam, pow, crash, while adults enjoyed the tongue-in-cheek humor. That same year, a feature-length film, A Batman, the Movie, 1966, was released, giving fans even more of West's colorful caped crusader. West even embraced the role outside of the show. In character, he recorded novelty songs like Miranda and appeared in public service announcements, once encouraging kids to buy U.S. savings stamps to support the Vietnam War effort. That's right, Batman himself was asking kids to help fund the government. But when the show ended in 1968, the campy image of Batman became both a blessing and a curse. West had become a household name, but he was also heavily typecast. Hollywood couldn't see him as anything other than Batman. Even when he tried to reinvent himself with tougher roles like The Girl Who Knew Too Much in 1969, audiences couldn't separate him from the caped crusader. Born Michael John Douglas on September 5, 1951 in Kennedy Township, Pennsylvania, Keaton grew up the youngest of 7 in a large Catholic family. After studying speech at Kent State University and dabbling in Pittsburgh theater, television, and even stand-up comedy, he slowly built a career in entertainment. Early on, he appeared in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as both a stagehand and performer, proof that every legend starts somewhere humble. By the mid-1980s, Keaton had made a name for himself as a sharp comedic actor, starring in films like Night Shift and Mr. Mom. But his big breakthrough came in 1988 with Tim Burton's Beetlejuice, where his wild, chaotic performance caught Hollywood's attention and Burton's trust. So when Warner Bros. Tapped Burton to direct a new, darker take on Batman, he wanted Keaton for the lead. The casting, however, caused an uproar. Fans argued that the comedic actor wasn't the right choice, with thousands of letters flooding Warner Bros. Complaining about the decision. But Burton and Keaton knew something audiences didn't. They were about to redefine Batman forever. Released in 1989, Batman became one of the year's biggest box office hits. Keaton's portrayal of Bruce Wayne was not flashy or over the top. He played him as quiet, brooding, and deeply haunted. And when the mask came on, his Batman was intimidating, restrained, and completely believable. This was no longer the campy Batman of the 1960s. Keaton's version introduced a darker, psychologically complex hero to moviegoers everywhere. Keaton returned in 1992 for Batman Returns, again directed by Tim Burton. The sequel pushed the darkness even further, pairing Batman with Danny DeVito's grotesque Penguin and Michelle Pfeiffer's iconic Catwoman. Once again, critics and audiences praised Keaton's performance, cementing him as one of the most respected Batmen of all time. But Keaton's run ended sooner than fans wanted. He was originally signed on for a third film, but when Tim Burton left the franchise and Joel Schumacher took over with a new, lighter vision, Keaton wasn't interested. Even when Warner Brothers reportedly offered him $15 million to stay, he walked away, saying the story didn't honor the character the way it should. For decades, fans hoped he might one day return, and in 2023, their wish came true. Keaton reprised the role of Batman in The Flash, once again donning the cowl after more than 30 years. His comeback was met with nostalgia and excitement, proving that his legacy as Batman is still alive and powerful today. After Michael Keaton's shocking exit from the Batman franchise, Warner Brothers scrambled to find a new Dark Knight. The year was 1994, and director Joel Schumacher had just seen Val Kilmer's mesmerizing performance as Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Impressed by Kilmer's intensity and charisma, Schumacher believed he was the perfect candidate to inherit the cape and cowl. Born in Los Angeles in 1959, Val Edward Kilmer was raised in a family with Swedish, Irish, German, and even Cherokee roots. At just 17 years old, he became the youngest student ever accepted into the Juilliard School's prestigious drama division. There, Kilmer's raw talent flourished, shaping him into one of the most versatile actors of his generation. When Keaton dropped out of Batman Forever over creative differences, Kilmer was offered the role almost immediately, without even reading the script or knowing who the director was. He simply accepted. Suddenly, he was Batman. Released in June 1995, Batman Forever was brighter, more colorful, and a major shift in tone from Tim Burton's darker films. Kilmer's Batman faced off against Jim Carrey's over-the-top Riddler and Tommy Lee Jones's chaotic Two-Face, while also navigating a love story with Nicole Kidman's Dr. Chase Meridian and mentoring Chris O'Donnell's Robin. The film was a massive financial success, raking in over $330 million worldwide, proving the Batman franchise was still a box office powerhouse. But opinions on Kilmer's Batman were divided. Some critics felt he lacked the intensity of Keaton, while others, like legendary film critic Roger Ebert, praised his performance. Even Batman co-creator Bob Kane himself declared Kilmer to be the best live-action Batman at the time, applauding the way he captured Bruce Wayne's duality. Yet behind the scenes, trouble was brewing. Kilmer reportedly clashed with Joel Schumacher, and he began feeling that Batman was being overshadowed by his villains. By the time production wrapped, Kilmer had already grown disillusioned with the role. When Warner Brothers prepared the next installment, Batman and Robin, 1997, Kilmer turned down the opportunity to return, citing creative frustrations and scheduling conflicts with the Saint. He walked away, leaving the mantle for George Clooney to pick up. Born in 1974 in Pembrokeshire, Wales to English parents, Bale had a rather unconventional upbringing. His family moved constantly, and by the time he was 15, he had lived in more than 15 different towns. This constant change shaped his adaptability, which later became one of his strongest tools as an actor. He started young, appearing in commercials and school plays, before eventually making waves with his chilling performance in American Psycho in 2000. That role proved he had the intensity and discipline to transform himself completely for a character. And that's exactly what Christopher Nolan saw when casting for. Nolan wanted a fresh start for The Dark Knight after the disappointing Joel Schumacher films of the 90s. Bale was the perfect choice, someone who could balance the haunted soul of Bruce Wayne with the physical intimidation of Batman. To prepare for the role, Bale went through an extreme body transformation. Just before being cast, he had lost a shocking amount of weight for The Machinist, dropping down to only 120 pounds. For Batman, he had to regain more than 100 pounds of muscle, reaching 220 pounds of pure bulk. He also trained in weapons, martial arts like Wing Chun, and the Keezy fighting method to give Batman a gritty, realistic fighting style never seen before on screen. When Batman Begins released in 2005, audiences were blown away. Bale brought a new depth to Bruce Wayne, portraying him not just as a billionaire playboy, but as a man scarred by trauma and fueled by determination. His gravelly, intimidating Batman voice became iconic, though also controversial among fans. The film was both a critical and financial success, revitalizing Batman for a new era. But it was the 2008 sequel, The Dark Knight, that changed everything. With Heath Ledger's unforgettable Joker, Bale's Batman faced his toughest psychological and moral challenges. The film became a cultural phenomenon, grossing over $1 billion worldwide and earning widespread acclaim as one of the greatest superhero films ever made. Bale's performance grounded Batman in reality, making audiences believe in a man who would actually put on the cowl and fight crime. Bale returned for one last ride in The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. Here, his Bruce Wayne was a broken recluse, both physically and mentally scarred after years as Batman. This version showcased Bale's range, as we saw a hero who had to rise once more despite overwhelming odds. The trilogy closed as one of the most successful franchises of all time, cementing Christian Bale as a definitive Batman for an entire generation. Affleck's journey to Batman was far from ordinary. Born in 1972 in Berkeley, California, he grew up in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in a family that knew both the struggles of addiction and the value of education. His mother was a Harvard-educated teacher, while his father battled severe alcoholism, at one point becoming homeless before later turning his life around. These experiences gave Ben an early sense of resilience and complexity, qualities that would later show up in his performances. From a young age, Affleck was acting. At just 7 years old, he appeared in an independent film, and by the 1980s, he was starring in the PBS science education series, The Voyage of the Mimi. Unlike many child actors, though, Affleck didn't have a stage parent pushing him. He simply fell into acting, but his talent kept him there. By the late 1990s, his career exploded after co-writing and starring in Good Will Hunting, and with his childhood best friend Matt Damon, which won them both an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. But when Warner Brothers announced that Ben Affleck would play Batman in Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, 2016, the reaction was explosive. Fans around the world questioned the decision. Affleck was known more for dramas and thrillers, not exactly the gritty, brooding Batman audiences expected. Some even called it one of the most bewildering casting choices ever. Yet when he finally appeared on screen, many critics and fans were stunned. Affleck's Batman was unlike any before him. Older, bulkier, and battle-hardened. This was a dark knight at the end of his rope, scarred by years of crime fighting and distrustful of heroes. His brutal warehouse fight scene in Batman v Superman remains one of the most praised Batman action sequences ever filmed, finally capturing the raw combat style from the comics. That same year, Affleck made a cameo in Suicide Squad, reminding audiences that this Batman wasn't just a solo figure, he was part of a larger, connected DC universe. Later, he reprised the role in Justice League, 2017, though behind the scenes, things were rocky. Creative clashes, reshoots, and personal struggles left Affleck worn down. He eventually stepped away from directing and starring in his own planned Batman solo movie, handing the mantle to Robert Pattinson instead. Robert Douglas Thomas Pattinson was born on the 13th of May, 1986, in the Barnes district of London, England. His father, Richard, ran a business importing vintage cars from the US, while his mother, Claire, worked at a modeling agency. Pattinson grew up with two older sisters, Victoria and Elizabeth. From a young age, he showed an interest in music, learning piano and guitar, and often writing his own songs. Pattinson's first screen role came in 2004 in Mira Nair's Vanity Fair, though his scenes were cut from the theatrical release. That same year, he appeared in the television fantasy film Dark Kingdom, The Dragon King. His big breakthrough came in 2005 when he was cast as Cedric Diggory in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. This role brought him early recognition as a rising young actor. In 2022, Pattinson took on one of the most iconic roles in cinema history, Batman/Bruce Wayne in Matt Reeves's The Batman. Initially, fans were skeptical of his casting due to his Twilight past, but Reeves had written the character specifically with him in mind after being impressed by his work in Good Time. The film was both a critical and commercial success, grossing over $770 million worldwide. Critics praised his darker, more vulnerable take on Bruce Wayne, with The Hollywood Reporter calling his performance riveting throughout.